The night my life split in two didn't start with sirens or screaming. It started with silence. I walked out of my office building like I had 100 times before. Badge clipped to my blouse, laptop bag digging into my shoulder, my brain already shifting to dinner, laundry, tomorrow's stand-up. The parking lot buzzed with that low evening hum, engines turning over, car doors slamming, distant traffic. And then I froze. My spot was empty. I stopped so abruptly the guy behind me muttered an apology and walked around. I barely heard him. My eyes were locked on the rectangle of asphalt that should have held my silver 2023 Camry. Instead, there was nothing. No broken glass, no tow sign, no angry sticker, just a dead, oil-stained patch of ground where my 6 years of sacrifice used to sit. I blinked hard. My chest tightened. I checked the row number, the pillar, the stupid little level 3B sign. I hit the panic button on my key fob like that might magically conjure the car into existence. Silence. I walked one row over, then another. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I circled the level once, twice, 4 times, each lap more frantic, trying to force a simpler explanation into place. Maybe I parked on 4 today, maybe I misremembered, maybe I'm just exhausted, but beneath every desperate maybe, something colder was forming, a familiar shape. This wasn't just bad luck. This felt like my life. I stopped in front of the empty space again. That car wasn't just metal and fabric. It was every double shift I'd worked in college. Every night I'd chosen instant noodles over takeout so I could send one more payment. It was my first brand. New car, paid off, mine. I pulled in a shaking breath and did what I'd been trained my whole life to do. Call my parents. My mother picked up on the second ring, her voice bright. Hola, mija, how was it, Mom? I cut in, my voice already cracking. My car is gone. I think it was stolen. I was parked in my usual spot, and now it's just empty. Should I call a tow company? Or the police? I don't know what to. Oh, honey, relax. She said, like I was fussing over a late Amazon package. We gave it to Alina. She needs it more. For a second, sound just stopped. You what? I whispered. We gave it to Alina. She repeated, patient, like she was explaining something obvious. She started that new job, remember. She can't be taking the bus. You'll manage for a few days. Don't make this bigger than it is. My brain tried to reboot around the words. We gave it to Alina. The Camry was mine. Bought in my name, paid with my money, insured under my policy. No one else had a spare key, unless you. Took my key. My voice came out thin and shaky from my room. My father's voice cut in, like he'd been on speaker the whole time. It's still in the family, Graz. You're overreacting. We all share. Remember when we helped you in college? I laughed. It came out wrong. Sharp, humorless. You used my savings to pay for Alina's class. I said quietly. That wasn't helping me. A silence, the thick, guilty kind I knew better than my own reflection. Don't start that again. My mother sighed. Your sister is trying. She's had a rough time. A rough time. The phrase was a family heirloom. It excused everything. I saw it all in a rush. Alina sobbing after totaling her first car. My parents wrapped around her like she was made of glass. Alina smashing the second one while texting. The front end folded like paper. My father murmuring. She's shaken. Don't scold her. Alina partying too hard, totaling the third. My mother whispering. She needs support, not judgment. 3 cars. No real consequences, and now my Camry, my small hard-earned miracle, had been handed to her like a spare hoodie. Mom, I said slowly, forcing each word out. I did not give anyone permission. You took my key, you took my car. We borrowed it, she snapped back. Stop being selfish. There it was, the word they kept holstered for me. Selfish. The accusation they used any time I dared to want something that was mine to keep, being the strong one, had never been a blessing. It was a sentence. It meant I was the one you could drain, over and over, because I wouldn't scream loud enough to embarrass you. At 16, I'd wiped tables and counted tips to buy a used laptop with a dying fan. The next morning, I watched my mother place a brand new MacBook on Alina's bed. She needs it for a project. She'd told me, like it was obvious. I'd nodded back then and swallowed the sting. At 18, Alina borrowed my bike for just an hour. I found it 2 days later, rusting in the rain behind a friend's house, seat torn, chain busted. Don't be dramatic. My father had said, you can fix it. She didn't mean any harm. In our house, intention always mattered more than impact, at least when it came to Alina. Now, standing in a cold concrete lot staring at an empty space where my independence used to be, something inside me snapped. No, I said. My mother bristled. No, what? No, I'm not going to just manage. I said, and my voice shocked even me. It was clear, steady. You stole my car. Don't do anything stupid, Graz. My father warned. This is family. We'll sort it out. Give Alina a few days. She'll bring it back. Family, the magic word. The shield they hid behind every time they crossed a line. For years, I believed them. I'd believed that love meant swallowing hurt until it turned into silence, that being strong meant not making a fuss. But in that moment, their favorite word felt less like love and more like a leash. I lifted the phone from my ear. My mother was still talking, sharp, rapid, urgent, but I didn't listen. I hung up. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I stared at the empty spot one last time, feeling every year of being the reliable one settle on my shoulders. Then I opened the keypad and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. My name is Graz Reyes. I said, my car has been taken without my permission. I know who has it. I want to report it as stolen. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over keeping the peace. Officer Ruiz arrived 20 minutes later, her patrol car lights cutting through the dim of the garage. By then, the adrenaline had burned off, leaving my hands numb and my legs weak. I felt like my bones were buzzing. She stepped out of the car with a calm, grounded energy that made the concrete under my feet feel a little less like quicks. And, "Are you Graz?" she asked. I nodded. My throat was too tight to trust. "Okay." She said, gentle but efficient. "Let's start with the basics. Show me the spot, then we'll go through your documents." I led her to the empty space. It looked even more absurd with her standing beside it, pen and notepad out, like we were investigating a ghost. She glanced up at the security camera mounted above. "Good, we'll request footage." Then she turned to me. "You said on the phone you know who has the vehicle." "Yes." The word felt heavy. My younger sister, Alina. Her eyebrows lifted a millimeter. Not surprised exactly, just noting. "And did you give her permission to use your vehicle?" "No." My voice shook. I forced myself to keep going. "I didn't give anyone permission. I was at work. I came out. It was gone. My parents told me on the phone they gave it to her." Ruiz let out a slow breath, the kind people do when something clicks into place in a way they've seen too many times. "All right. Do you have your registration and insurance on you?" My fingers fumbled through my bag, finally closing over the folder I always kept in the glove compartment. Except the glove compartment was gone, so it had been living in my backpack the last few days. All my just-in-case habits finally doing their job. I handed her the stack, registration, insurance card, payment records. She flipped through them carefully, all under your name. She confirmed, "Yes." "And you're the sole owner?" "Yes, completely. No co-signers, no joint owners." "No, just me." Saying it out loud made something tighten in my chest. Just me. No one else had earned a single inch of that car. She nodded, her expression sharpening. "All right. And to be clear, no one had permission to take the keys from your home and move the vehicle." "No one." She met my eyes. "Okay, Ms. Reyes. Then this is vehicle theft. Family or not." The words dropped between us like stones. Family or not. She walked the area, took photos of the empty spot, the level markings, the nearest camera. She radioed in a bolo, "Be on the lookout," for a silver 2023 Toyota, a Camry registered to me. Hearing my sister's name spoken into that radio did something strange to my lungs. I'd heard her name attached to so many things over the years, scholarships, emergencies, drama, accidents, but never like this. When we finished the report and she closed her notebook, I felt like I'd just signed something irreversible. "What happens now?" I asked. "We'll put the vehicle in the system as stolen," she said. "If another unit spots it, or if it gets flagged by a traffic camera, we'll stop it. If we locate it, we'll contact you and let you know where it's being held. You may need to pay impound or storage fees, but that can be handled later." My stomach twisted. "And my sister, Ruiz's gaze held mine steady. That depends on a lot of factors, but you should know this. The law doesn't make exceptions for feelings. Family theft cases are still theft. The law doesn't make exceptions for feelings. In my family, everything was an exception. Every line could be crossed as long as it was followed by a sad story or a trembling apology. Consequences were negotiable. Guilt was a group project I was always assigned to carry. Now, for the first time, someone outside that bubble drew a line and said, "This is what it is." When she left, the parking lot felt massive and hollow. I sat on the curb, hugging my knees, my phone cold in my palm. The air tasted like exhaust and dust. The guilt hit me first. Images crashed over me. Elena in a police station, eyes wide and wet. My parents pacing, panicking, calling every relative to complain about what Graz has done now. And my mother crying. My father silent in that dangerous way of his. I could already hear the words, "You're tearing this family apart. You're cruel, you're selfish. You're ungrateful after everything we did for you." I'd heard versions of them my whole life. For not lending Elena clothes I'd bought with my own money. For being upset when my savings went missing. For asking why my work was treated as duty and hers as heroism. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your sister called us sobbing. Drop the report. She made a mistake. Don't ruin her life, then another. Be understanding, Graz. She's fragile. You know that, then another. Don't be dramatic. It's just a car." Not one person asked if I was okay, if I had a way home, if I was scared or angry or just tired. I didn't reply, not because I was strong. I was just done, too exhausted to explain to people who had already chosen their side. That night, my apartment felt unfamiliar, like a hotel room I didn't remember booking. I made tea I didn't drink. I sat in the dark, city lights reflecting off the glass and let the weight of what I'd done close around me. Reporting your own family isn't clean. It scrapes against every story you were told about loyalty. It shakes loose all the quiet, ugly truths you've trained yourself not to see. But every time I pictured Elena behind my wheel, laughing, music blaring, maybe posting a selfie with my car like it was just another thing the world owed her. Something inside me hardened. She hadn't called, not once, to ask if I was stranded. My parents hadn't offered to help file a report. They had only cared that I didn't disturb the ecosystem that kept Elena safe and me bleeding. Somewhere between the guilt and the fear, a new feeling formed. Small, quiet, resolve. 3 days later, when my phone lit up with Officer Ruiz, my heart tried to claw its way out of my ribs. MS Reyes, she said, "We located your vehicle. Your sister was stopped for speeding near Aurora. The car has been impounded." Impounded? I repeated the word thick on my tongue. "And Elena, she's fine. She's being questioned now." Of course she was fine. She always was. Relief, anger, dread. They tangled together so hard I could barely breathe. I thanked Ruiz, hung up, and stared at my reflection in the black TV screen. This was it. This was the moment everything either cracked or finally shifted. That evening, I picked up a rental and drove to the impound lot, following the directions Ruiz had given me. The building sat behind a high chain link fence topped with barbed wire, lit by harsh floodlights that made everything feel exposed and unforgiving. Inside, a bored clerk slid forms toward me without looking up. "Silver Camry, space 34. Sign here, here, and here." My signature looked shaky on the paper. The warehouse echoed with every step as I walked between the rows. Cars dented, cars abandoned, cars that had seen more chaos than I wanted to imagine. Then I saw it, my car, and my stomach dropped. It was my Camry, but it looked like a stranger. Fast food bags spilled across the floor, greasy wrappers stuffed into the cup holders. An energy drink had tipped over and dried into a sticky crust along the center console. Makeup smears streaked the passenger door like fingerprints. Mud tracked across the mats I'd saved up to buy. My emergency blanket in the back seat, carefully folded and tucked away for just in case, lay crumpled like trash. She only had it for 8 hours. I whispered, "She." A voice behind me said. I turned. Officer Ruiz stood a few feet away, arms crossed loosely, gaze sweeping the interior. "Elena," I said. "My sister." Ruiz nodded, exhaling slowly. This kind of carelessness, not unusual, People treat what they don't earn differently. She didn't say it cruelly, just, plainly, like stating the weather. I gripped the door frame to steady myself. It wasn't just the mess, it was what the mess meant. My car had never been just a car. It was proof that I could build something solid without anyone's help, that I wasn't just the family's backup generator, there to keep the lights on while everyone else burned out. Seeing it trashed so quickly felt like someone had taken every year I'd spent surviving and smeared them with greasy fingerprints. The paperwork crawled, release forms, ID checks, disclaimers, impound fees that would later be rolled into restitution. Every signature felt like I was reclaiming my own life, line by line. When it was over, Ruiz handed me the keys. Whatever happens next, she said, pausing, remember this. Accountability isn't cruelty. Her words followed me home like a shadow. My family didn't see it that way. A week later, I sat in a hard wooden chair outside courtroom 4B, knees bouncing despite my best effort to stay still. The hallway smelled sharp, like disinfectant and fear. Paper shuffled, heels clicked, someone coughed too loudly down the corridor. My parents sat across from me on a bench, whispering in rapid Spanish. My mother's lips were tight. My father's jaw worked like he was grinding stone. Between them, Elena stared at the floor, leg jiggling, hair perfectly styled for someone about to stand in front of a judge. She hadn't texted me, not once, not to explain, not to apologize, not even to rage. The silence felt louder than anything she could have said. When the clerk called our case, the sound echoed in my chest. We walked in. The judge was a woman with sharp eyes and a face that said she'd heard every lie and halved. Truth this building could produce. She shuffled through the file, lips flattening as she read. Miss Elena Reyes, she said eventually, I understand you wish to enter a plea today. Elena's voice came out small. Yes, Your Honor. Do you have a written statement? Yes. Please read it aloud for the record. Elena unfolded a sheet of paper with shaking hands. The rustle seemed to fill the room. I, Elena Reyes. She began, voice quivering, admit that I took my sister's vehicle without permission. I knew the car was not mine. I took it anyway because I assumed she would forgive me. What I did was wrong, I'm sorry. I had to hold myself still. Those words, I knew I took it anyway, were the most honest ones I'd ever heard her speak about anything that hurt me. The judge nodded. Let the record reflect a guilty plea. My mother let out a tiny gasp. My father shifted, glaring at the defense attorney like this was somehow their fault. Given the circumstances, the judge continued, this court sentences the defendant to 6 months of probation, a 1-year license suspension, and restitution to the victim for impound and associated fees. The gavel hit wood. My parents flinched. In their world, Elena was always inches from disaster, and we were all expected to form a soft landing. Now, for the first time, the ground had refused to rise up to catch her. They surged to her side immediately. My mother wrapped her in an embrace like she was shielding her from gunfire. My father put an arm around her shoulders, murmuring in her ear. They didn't look at me. Not once. As they walked past, Elena's eyes flicked to mine for half a second. Wide, wet, full of something I couldn't quite name. Regret, anger, fear. It didn't matter. Before a word could form on her lips, my mother tightened her grip and steered her away. Not now, my mother whispered. Don't let her make this worse. Me, in their story, I was the villain, the one who had called the police, who had put family business in the system, who had dared to believe my car, my safety, my boundaries mattered as much as my sister's feelings. When the door closed behind them, a strange calm settled over me. Not joy, not triumph, just stillness. For the first time, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't bargaining with myself about whether I'd overreacted. I wasn't reviewing every step to see if I could have been softer, quieter, easier. I felt anchored. Outside, the Denver sky hung low and heavy, clouds pressing down on the city. I walked to my Camry, the interior newly scrubbed, the steering wheel familiar under my hands, and sat there for a long moment. Mine, it was such a small word, 4 letters, but it had never really belonged to me before. Not when family was the trump card that could be thrown down anytime I tried to draw a line. This time, the line held. I drove home slowly, every mile loosening a knot in my chest I hadn't even realized was there. At my apartment, I set the court papers on the counter, made myself tea, and actually drank it this time. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't grieving, I was reclaiming. This wasn't the destruction of a family, no matter how loudly they insisted it was. This was the end of me being the family's convenient sacrifice, the beginning of something else, freedom. The noise died slowly. For a while my phone was a battlefield, unknown numbers, aunts, cousins. Old family friends who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly bursting with opinions. You didn't have to go that far. She's your sister. A car can be replaced. Family can't. No one seemed to care that, in our family, I had always been the one replaced. My needs, my boundaries, my right to be treated like more than a bottomless resource. Eventually, when it became clear I wasn't dropping the charges, the calls thinned out, then stopped. The silence that replaced them wasn't empty. It was spacious, like someone had finally turned off a TV that had been blaring in the background my whole life. I moved to a new apartment on the west side of Denver, closer to the foothills. The kind of place where the air felt lighter and I could actually see the mountains instead of just hearing people talk about them. I changed my number. I kept only the contacts who treated me with respect, coworkers who'd quietly checked if I needed rides, a neighbor who'd helped jump my battery in the winter, a couple of old friends from college who knew the real stories behind the rough time, narratives my family loved. My days slowly formed a new rhythm, quiet mornings, work that didn't feel like an escape hatch anymore. Evenings where the silence in my apartment wasn't heavy with unsaid apologies. Every Thursday, I went to a support group at a community center. They called it Boundaries and Healing, which sounded like a self-help book title, but the people there, they were real. A woman who'd gone no contact with her mother after decades of emotional blackmail. A man whose brother had drained his finances for years. Someone who'd left a job that treated "we're a family" as an excuse to overwork and underpay. The first time I spoke, my voice shook so badly I had to pause twice. I expected the room to wince or judge or correct me. Instead, they nodded. Some people even smiled sadly, like they'd been waiting for someone else to say it out loud. My parents called me selfish, I said. For wanting my car back, for filing the report, for not sacrificing my life for my sister's comfort, I guess. They called you selfish. The group leader said gently, because selfish is what people call you when your boundaries stop benefiting them. That sentence burrowed deep and stayed. The months passed. I got used to the steering wheel club on my car, the extra key lock on my door, the new rules I had for who got access to my space, my time, my things. Not because I was paranoid, but because I'd finally accepted I was worth protecting. Sometimes, in weaker moments, I'd wonder how my parents were spinning the story. Maybe I was the cold-hearted daughter who chose a car over her sister. Maybe I was the Americanized one who forgot where she came from. Maybe I was the villain in every retelling, but here's the thing about revenge no one tells you. The real kind, the lasting kind, rarely looks like a movie montage set to dramatic music. It's not smashing windows or screaming comebacks. Sometimes revenge is just living well without them, building a life where their version of you no longer matters. Almost a year after the court date, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. Plain, no return address, but the handwriting on the front made my stomach flip. Elena. I held it for a long minute, thumb resting on the seal. Part of me wanted to toss it straight into the trash. Another part of me, the one that had spent years craving even a sliver of honest accountability, carefully opened it. The letter was short. She didn't beg me to forgive her. She didn't blame our parents or the judge or me. She didn't call me dramatic or cruel or selfish. She wrote that she was in therapy, that losing her license and being forced to rely on buses and rides had cracked something open in her, that she'd started realizing how many times people had quietly cleaned up her messes. That she was just now understanding that consequences weren't personal attacks. They were the result of choices. I know I hurt you. She wrote, not just with the car, for years. I'm trying to be better. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I see it now. I read it twice, then folded it once and slid it into a drawer. There was no cinematic swell of forgiveness, no sudden urge to call her and cry it out, no carefully scripted reunion where everyone hugs and promises to do better. What I felt instead was peace. Some stories don't need a reunion to have closure. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough, not for them, for you. To know you weren't crazy, you weren't too sensitive, you were hurt. And you were right to draw a line. That evening, I parked my Camry on a hill overlooking the mountains. The sky was soft and painted in layers of gold and purple. I turned off the engine and just sat there, fingers wrapped lightly around the steering wheel. My car, my life, my boundaries, what's mine stays mine now, not because I guard it with fear, but because I finally protect the person behind the boundary. I thought about the girl wiping tables to buy a used laptop while watching her sister unwrap a brand new one. The teen dragging her ruined bike out of the rain. The college student who woke up to find her savings gone to cover one more of Elena's rough times. If I could talk to her now, I'd say this: you are not selfish for wanting what's yours. You are not cruel for insisting on consequences. You are not ungrateful for refusing to be used. You're just done being the sacrifice, and that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all. If any part of my story feels like your story, if you've ever been the strong one, everyone expects to carry the weight. This space is for you. Tell me where you're watching from. Share your own story in the comments. You're not alone, and you're not crazy for wanting more. And if you want more stories like this about quiet revenge, hard boundaries, and finally choosing yourself, hit subscribe to my channel Void Revenge Story and turn on notifications. There are more stories coming, and this time they are for you.